Yo, welcome everybody. We are on episode 102. Today we discuss a recap of the 100th episode after actually listening to it, why I'm in Cleveland, the Pittsburgh event, a little bit about the team, recovery, injury, how to manage injury, how to still train around it, a little bit on supplements, and a little bit of bullshitting back and forth with me and Dave. So let's get into the episode. You know that there has had to have been some sacrifice, whether it's time or nutrition or whatever it is.
Recording myself talking about having a relationship with my chest.
I'm Ben Canning.
I'm Dave Kennedy.
And this is Hacking Health Podcast.
Hey everybody, welcome to this week's in-person podcast. We're coming from you at the Trusted Sec headquarters here in Fairlawn, Ohio. And Ben is in town from Belfast, Ireland, and we are going to do the podcast live.
We are. What a setting that
right?
we have. Yeah.
Like all these windows, some nice natural light.
Yeah, it's perfect.
I was fighting with the city this morning trying to get a driveway approved, which has been like the bane of my... It's not a win situation. It's how many times do you have to change what you originally had to satisfy what they're doing?
Just to get a driveway?
Just to get a driveway put in, yeah. Because we have this like downstairs in our basement area, it has a walkout, and what I'm trying to do is get a small driveway put into there so that we can load food trucks and things like that, because we have a lot of like events and a lot of chapter events and things like that that we have here at Trusted Sec, and so. Just it's a pain in the butt because you have to like carry all these big things down these steps, and the team here has to do all of that, and so trying to get a driveway put into there has been about a 2-month process so far. But we're close. I got through all of the city. Now I got hit with the fire department, and now I'm through the fire department. So I think I'm good after I make these changes. But it went from like this tiny project where I'm like, hey, I'm sure I can just pour some concrete to. Hey, I need structural architecture engineers and environmental and all of these other things. I'm like, oh my God, like seriously.
So a note to anybody who's building a worldwide headquarters, take that into consideration.
Take that into consideration is that you want to get it all as much as you possibly can built out into the ahead of time when you build it, not after the fact. But it's going to be cool because like we're also tearing down like these windows that we have there, and we're opening it up to like a garage door that kind of opens up so you can like get like air in and out. So it should be pretty sweet. But yeah, it'll be fun. Yeah,
nice, cool. So I think we need to go back a little bit. Obviously, when we recorded episode 101, we hadn't actually listened to episode 100.
That's right.
That was an event for me.
Did you cry?
I didn't, but potentially because Ram was sitting beside me. But I did. I was on the phone to my mum the day after, and she was like, I cried the whole way through, and I was like, I'm going to take that as a positive thing, like in a good way. But I think I sort of had the thought that it would be a testament to We Hack Health in the community and what it's about. And it was exactly that. There was a lot of cool things said. There was a lot of cool... We should have got you in this podcast now that you're here. But anyway, it's fine. That's Ran.
Ran's in the back.
Ran's in the background. There's a lot of cool things said. Thanks again to, I guess, everybody who was a part of it. But yeah, it was a good sort of reaffirming of why we're doing this, I think. Like I said, a lot of cool things said. If you haven't listened to it, I would definitely recommend going to listen to it. I think it sort of puts everything together as to what we're about.
What I thought was really cool about the whole thing was, I have been here since really the beginning of this, right? And granted, you already had your business and everything established, but I don't think there was anybody in the U.S. at that time. It was all women, and it has really transpired vastly different. So like we went from weekly check-in calls, things like that, to you being able to hold events here in the States, which was absolutely incredible. And what was really neat to see was, one, the progress of everybody has been amazing. I mean, look at Todd. I mean, for crying out loud, that guy looks like a friggin' beast. With the picture he took with the chains and everything else, it looks incredible, right? Boyd, everybody, Kev. I mean, everybody has had their own level of success of what they've wanted to accomplish. And you can, what was great about that podcast was how that's impacted and changed them personally, right? It's changed more than they probably ever had imagined. When you think about like health and fitness, you're like, oh, okay, I got to go to the gym, I got to do this, I got to do that, and life's going to be exactly the same. Whereas it actually isn't. It changes your life in a lot of different ways for the positive. That you feel more confident about yourself, in your family, in your business, what you can accomplish. And as well as the camaraderie that, a lot of these folks have built with one another where, men specifically, we don't share things very well. We're not very open when it comes to emotions. And when it comes to the group, you have that support system that I think has really helped a lot of folks overcome probably the challenges that they've had their whole life, to really hit the goals that they needed to, right? And it was really cool to see kind of everybody's perspective and how they, have added their own, kind of culture to, the BC fam and to hacks and everything else. And, the whole group, to really help one another, but also, make improvements in themselves. And it was really cool, to see everybody kind of bonding together like that was really neat. So
it was cool. Like, it's cool to see how it impacts beyond that, like them sharing those stories, like the people who have struggled with their weight their entire life or whatever it might be, to then now becoming a person that people come to them for advice for, like things that they never thought that were actually possible. So yeah, it was very cool across the board, and it's cool, like you said, to see the sort of evolution of people, and I guess to sort of bring us closer to where we're at now and the reason that I'm here. We hosted an event in Pittsburgh last week. Was that last week?
It was last week, yeah.
Last week.
Yeah. But if you see me on my phone, I'm checking to see if Uber dropped off our Chipotle. So just I'm not being rude here.
Okay. Yeah, so I mean, there was only 7 or 8 weeks between those two events, between Colorado and Pittsburgh. Yep. We planned it around the Pittsburgh B-sides. Shout out to the Riverside Casino for not letting me in. What was cool for me around that event was to see the progress of people in those specific events. So I think there was 23 people total at that event. 13 new faces, so 10 like people who had been to events before, one of them being me and one of them being Rand. But to see, example, like Tyler, for example, like obviously Tyler has been, shout out to him for being to every single event, and sorry for all of the events that we're now putting on. For him to sort of take over within the group that he was working with and like be able to coach him and have an understanding of like adjustments, things that he's learned that he can sort of put on to sort of take the pressure off me or Adam or anybody else who's coaching or whatever. And even Thomas, like it was Thomas' first event in Colorado, and then to sort of share the stuff that he had learned there and that he'd been doing in the time between then and that event to the people he was working with, was like, that for me is cool, because the stuff that I'm teaching there and then passing it on. So it was cool for me to sort of see that from a coaching side as well.
I wish I could have been there. I was out.
We're just doing them without you at this point. Like we're just rolling them out.
Keep rolling out. Yeah, I mean, you just keep, it's. I do miss I wasn't able to go to the Pittsburgh one, but I was out camping with the family, which family life is very important to me. But those events I think are such a great opportunity to see for most people the hurdle that they experience is twofold. All right. One, they've probably experienced, a lot of failure in the past around their health and fitness goals, right? And two, there's so much out there as far as like bad information or the fad diets or these miracle pills or that probably tried. I tried, and just hasn't worked, right? And so, does what you're doing actually work, right? And it's cool to see so many success stories with the people that come into those events, to see their progress, to see. It's funny because I remember, a lot of the folks that when they first came in, they're awkward when they're lifting. They don't know how to do certain things, right? And now they're like doing, proper form and technique. They got the system down pat. They're now at an expert level when it comes to their health and nutrition and fitness.
And there's a little bit of you, the same as me, is like, oh shit, these are creeping up on the lifts.
Yes.
Like, we got to push it a little bit.
Yeah. I get a little scared at some, especially as
but good to see.
Shoulders. I'm like, okay, I gotta step it up a little bit here.
Good to sort of keep us.
Yeah, keep you humble on everything, right? Yeah. And so it's really cool to see the progress of these folks, and to see new people come in and start to go through the same things. And it's funny because you can see the questions in like the Discord servers, and you're like, he's at this point at the stage, he's like at this point. You can tell it's like very similar things across the board with everybody that we've all kind of gone through, and those events are just such, I think, a great way of being able to do it. And you have another one, I think, planned in Vegas, right? Just a little bit of a get together, maybe not a formal thing, but yeah.
The thing about, first of all, what you're saying about the events, even in, beyond people coming in, like people who are new to the events, like you can see in the first night when everybody arrives, they're like stood against the wall, like don't want to be involved, but I'm here. And then, within
I can so relate to that, by the way. Like
just
the
awkward and
nervousness,
social.
awkward.
Yeah.
Like,
Because
don't know anybody.
It's fine for us
You're
because
vulnerable
we've done
because
it
you're like,
time and
hey, I'm
time
supposed
again.
to be this awesome person at hacking, but I know nothing about this or whatever. And now you're in this situation where you're like, oh my god, like I know nothing here, and I'm so out of place, but I'm going to do it anyway. I'm going to overcome that anxiety to come in and try this out.
Yeah, and then within like an hour or so, like everybody, is very welcoming. If there are people who are new and people have been like, within an hour, everybody's cool, like chilling out, like sharing conversations and whatever else. So the way that actually Ram put this to me, like every event is, everybody stepping into my world as in the gym. I feel like this time around we're stepping into your world, coming to Vegas to all of the shit show. So it'll be an experience for sure. It'll be slightly different. I am going to host an event at the Airbnb. We will be doing some training. I guess this will be released before that. So if you want to do some training, hit me up. We will have a gym sort of that are going to do some coaching out of, and then there's maybe 30-ish clients that are going to be there throughout the time at the conference and stuff like that. So we'll definitely do something there as well. But it will be slightly different because we're fitting it in around the conferences versus a standalone event.
Well, anything in Vegas is, it's just crazy. There's so many events going on, meetups, parties, things like that. So, for me, it's funny because like everybody's like, hey, do you want to get a lift in? I'm like, yeah, I do, but like trust me, there's no chance of getting on the schedule because like I'm already booked for like binary defense stuff and trusted tech stuff and interviews and team stuff and it's
you have to work.
I have to work, like, and so there's all these like things scheduled. So yeah, so for me it's like I got to get the lifts out super early in the morning to get that done to kind of kickstart the rest of the day because from 9 a.m. Vegas time till 1 or 2 in the morning Vegas time. It's completely compact with everything going on, and I enjoy that. It's funny because like I was looking back, I think the first time I went to Vegas was 2005, and I have gone every year since except for COVID. So if you think about that, I've been going to Vegas for almost 18 years or something like that, if I'm doing my math right here. But so 17 years, excluding COVID, and it's kind of a fun mixture of emotion. Like when I first get off the plane at Vegas, there's this distinct smell, and I'm like, oh god, I'm here again. And then it's super hot, and like I've already done like the shows and the casinos and like all sorts. So I'm kind of over like the nightlife situation. But what's cool is Erin is my wife is coming with me as well this year. She came last year, and she's got a couple of her girlfriends that are going out as well. So it's not like my entire time is going to be dedicated to that, but it's a nice getaway for Erin and I to go and hang out, see a couple shows together, do the date night type of stuff, and do that. So it's going to be a little bit of a mixture of fun and everything else. But I think for you, your first time there, you're gonna have a lot of fun. You're gonna see a lot of crazy things, and I'll tell you, like, there's no other experience like DEF CON and Black Hat. It's just they're so massively large and huge. The only thing maybe that is in comparison would be what's called RSA, but it's not the same. RSA more executive level type of thing. DEF CON definitely not. It's it's insane. It's over 5 hotels. They do an amazing job. I've been going to DEF CON since my first DEF CON was 2003. I think it was 2003. Either 2002, 2003. But it was at this place called Alexis Park, and just amazing to see how it's grown from just a few hundred people to 30,000 people or more. So just insane. But it's gonna be a good time. You're gonna have a great time, and I'm looking forward to getting some lifts in. Dragon's Lair, the other place that I like to go to.
Smash Fitness.
Smash Fitness.
And Torture Gym is the gym. What a name for a gym.
Torture Gym. I haven't seen that one.
It's only opened in July, started July. Okay. So that's where I'm going to be coaching out of.
That's awesome. Very cool.
Looks like a cool gym. We'll find it.
Yeah, it's gonna be a good time. So moving on to that, you've been here obviously for a week, 2 weeks now, but here just for about a week or so. Mm-hmm. We got some good lifts in. We got to go to Old School Iron, which was absolutely epic. I love that place every single time.
I'm going to say favorite gym I've ever been to.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. Like, and I'm glad it has to be in Cleveland, Ohio, but like, I visited a lot of gyms in my travel, and nothing compares to Old School Iron.
No.
The vibe, how big and vast it is, you have a bunch of like older ladies that are just vacuuming all over the place all the time, keeping it super clean. But you get everything from like total huge, massive bodybuilding meatheads all the way to people that are just starting. It's got a really cool vibe there, and dumbbells I think go up to 200 pounds, right?
Yeah.
And it's just massive, and it's like they got a lot of old irony, like rusting type of things. Also, the new equipment. You broke the hip abductor machine.
Yeah, you're welcome. Did that specifically
Thank
for
God.
you.
Thank God. I hate those. I will say though, it's funny. So when I got onto the hip abductor machines, when I was doing the hip abductors, like the inward moment, I can tell I have really weak abductors because they're shaking as I'm going in and doing it, right? So I'm like, well, shit, maybe I should.
So what you're saying is I was right.
Maybe I need to get a hip abductor machine. So we'll see.
I'm not saying that. Like, Aaron, if you're listening, I have not recommended any more equipment.
I might need to get one. I'm just saying. So we'll find out. But no, it was good times hanging out. And let's see, what Rob, Kev, Cody,
and John, and even John. For me, like that, on top of that number one would sort of shift me to the. It would be cool if I lived here because people could just come down and train all the time. But Trish,
you notice he said that this time, not me. He said it'd be cool if I lived down here. I didn't even bring it up. I'm not bringing that up again. But now that you brought it up, so when you move it down here.
No. But, I obviously saw Rob, Kev, Cody, and John like a couple of days before, and they all traveled, 2+ hours to come down and just train. Like, to me, that was cool. That was cool to do it. We captured a vlog, which...
Dude, John is built dude. Like a dude is just a strong dude, man. Yeah, really strong dude.
There was a little bit of like... My ego was on the line with that because he was doing RDLs, and I was like, "Shit,
that's your move. That's your patented. That's your finisher.
I know.
That's your finisher, man.
Luckily, I was able to show up when I needed to, but I was like underpaid at one point.
What's funny? So like Ben and I were talking. This was like 6 months ago or so, and we're like, we have to have like our one like patented move that is like our move that we're the best at, right? And it's got to be one of those things where it's like everybody knows that it's us. For me, it's going to be sumo deadlifts because I really enjoy that.
I would like to say if you did do more adductors, you would be much better at, just so you know.
Okay, that's fair enough. I mean, I just ordered it while we were talking, so Aaron. No, I mean, so yours is RDLs. And it's funny because I always hated RDLs for some reason. I just didn't feel like when you're pulling so much weight on a deadlift, like 500, 600 pounds, and you're doing squats for 400 or 500 pounds. Usually RDLs are going to be with dumbbells. Most cases you can obviously do it with barbell as well, but the weight that you load onto that is usually substantially lower than what you do on those. So I was always like, man, I don't feel like I'm hitting my glutes and hammies enough with that. But what I found is it's such a controlled exercise around your glutes and hammies that the stretch motion that you get with that, as well as the time under tension, it really wrecks your glutes and hammies really well, and it's a phenomenal exercise. And even with 50, 60 pound dumbbells, you can murder, your legs that way. I'm obviously in the 200 mark, no, just kidding. But I mean, but with 100 pound dumbbells, it's a phenomenal workout for me.
The thing is, it's not a good movement if you can't execute it properly. But whenever you finally get what it should look and feel like, get the proper connection, get the proper contraction, and actually feel it properly, like you said, control it like slow. It is definitely it's my favorite.
Well, what's
easy for me to say.
And
it's 506 for 3 reps, just for anybody who's wondering.
Form is extremely important too, because no arching in the back, making sure that you it literally is a stretch motion, right? You're basically bending down like you're gonna touch your tippy toes, from a stretch perspective, but you're obviously loading with weights, and then getting down to that point where you feel that stretch, and then pulling back up. That motion is kind of an awkward, unique motion for most people. Don't typically do like the hip flexing or the hip movement to be able to do that, and keeping your back straight as you're going down. So it's such a nice. I fell in love with RDLs too. Definitely not my patented move, but I'll stick with sumos. But what's great is parlaying into our main topic here, which is getting into recovery and making sure that you can address injury when you have them, and that's bound to happen on anything, right? Doesn't mean you're doing well lifting, but it could be anything in life. We have to be very mindful of recovery. And so when we were at Old School Iron, that was, I think, the second time I had done deadlifts in over a month and a half because I had fractured my ankle.
I would like to say that was a very good job for you, because beforehand you would have just been like, fuck it, I'm just going to do them anyway.
You're absolutely right.
And you took the time off.
I took the time off. And it was really tough for me. And it's interesting because when I look at injury, it kind of freaks me out, because I'm like, oh man, I'm going to, old Dave, again, coming into my mind. One, I'm not going to enjoy working out as much. Does that mean I'm going to get out of it? Which it's not going to happen. But two, am I going to lose the gains in strength that I had as I was going through? And three, how do I continue to make progress when I'm hurting? And, the two things that the ankle fracture did to me was, one, eliminate my ability to go to Orange Theory, which so my cardio, my HIIT training is out, right? And two, obviously anything ability-wise for me to load onto my legs, deadlifts, squats, leg presses, hack squats, all completely off the table. And so legs are one of my one of the biggest things I wanted to focus on as part of this, my back and my legs are the two areas I kind of want to blow up a bit. And so it was really hard for me at first to kind of admit that. And it was interesting. The first, I think, 3 or 4 days, I was really kind of agitated or aggro because I was just like, this sucks. Like, my schedule, my routine's all messed up. I'm normally going to Orange Theory on this day. I'm normally doing legs on this day. What do I do now? And what I found is that if you stay motivated in those areas, you can still do things that hit your legs, right? So I'm fortunate. I got a great gym in my basement. I have a leg extension machine, a leg curl machine, and I found those I could still leverage without putting tension onto the ankle, and those are perfectly fine. Now, boring as hell when you have to do 1,000 leg extensions and leg curls. You're like, this sucks, and then you already hate running the rack. So but I'm doing that like 3 times. I'm like, this sucks even worse. Just to get the type of volume that you need to do that. But what I found was that what was really interesting about not being able to do cardio is I found that I recovered faster, and I was able to actually make some pretty substantial gains while I was still injured by working around those injuries and being very careful with it. And the big thing for me is like, you got to be really careful not to injure yourself because your ankle's in a completely compromised state, right? It's healing, so therefore it's already at a weakened state to where any type of rolling of the ankle or things like that is going to cause an immediate fracture again. So for me, I really took it seriously to not push myself that would injure it. Now, we'll talk a little bit about peptides and what I did for recovery to heal a little bit faster, and I think that definitely had a major a component to that as well. But taking care of yourself, doing the things that you can to recover, stretching, and listening to your body are all the most, I think, important things when it comes to recovering from an injury. And there's certain things you might not be able to do. Like doctors may say you can't lift anything for months, right, or 2 months or 1 month. What do you do in those situations? And those are the things that maybe would be good to, I think, dive down into today and talk through.
I think before we get into that, we need to recognize your realization around doing Orange Theory less.
Yeah, I mean, it's not going to happen. However, the reason it won't happen is the reason it won't happen is it's something that Aaron and I enjoy doing. Yes, and
together. I do say absolutely keep it in. But
no, I will say that what's interesting about cardio is when I go to Orange Theory, I'm competing with everybody there. I'm pushing myself to the max, right? So I'm pushing myself very, very hard, which I do believe has been a hindrance to some of my performance, increases in strength. And not that I haven't, gone to an amazing level. I'm very happy with where I'm at. But I used to do it Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, where I was doing it 3 times a week. And you suggested for me cutting it back. I'm like, what? I can't do that. I'm going to gain 100 pounds again. And what's interesting is when the month that I was out of Orange Theory, I lost more weight than when I was doing cardio. And I also noticed my recovery was much easier on my muscle groups, and I wasn't as sore as much, and I actually felt better strength and energy throughout the day. If I do Orange Theory, I'm pretty wrecked through the rest of the day because it's such a high intensity type of involvement that I'm pretty tired, as I'm going through the day. And then sometimes, I might have to do Orange Theory, and then I might have to do a lift in the afternoon, which is double the amount of energy. So I've noticed recovery was a lot easier with that, and that maybe I didn't need to be doing as much cardiovascular work as I really have been doing in the past. But I do enjoy it. I like going there with Erin. She's had a lot of success. She's been doing amazing on her fitness and health journey as well. So I definitely want to keep that consistency going. But I would say if Erin wasn't going through that, I would probably not be doing Orange Theory very often, just because my goals are very different. I want to continue to grow, get bigger, stronger. And cardiovascular work definitely has a hindrance if you're doing it to a certain capacity. If you're staying in like zone 3, zone 4, I don't think that's an issue. I think that's great for your heart. But if you're doing high intensity work, things like that, definitely it's a full workout. You need time for your body to recover, right?
Well, the thing for me is it's stress. It's the stress in your body, and that's why I think that we saw the improved, obviously, recovery, but also more rapid fat loss. Because it was less stress in your body. Your body was in a less stressed state. And, and we probably had this conversation before, but it's the one thing that people think that they need to do is like HIIT training. And I'm like, number one, to train actually at high intensity is quite difficult. And number two, life is stressful enough without adding that as an additional stress. So reducing that and doing some level of cardio, yes, absolutely, but it doesn't need to be at that high intensity. I'm not saying Aaron, again, if you're listening, I'm not saying don't do it or say like do definitely keep it in, but it was good to see that you cannot do it and everything's okay. Because I think that was a big thing that was in your head.
For sure. And that's, leading me to where we're kind of going my plan, which is, after Black Cat, my goal is to really do a hardcore bulk this winter, right? And that's going to be something we've never done before. I mean, we've done bulks, but this is an extended bulk, and we're going to go pretty hard on this one. Now, again, still controlled, still within a very good system and framework, but I'm at the comfort level now where I know for a fact that if I just want to change and lose 30 pounds or 40 pounds, I can do it without any hindrance whatsoever, without having to watch the Food Network stuff. But for me, it's just a matter of I have how I eat every day, right? And if I'm in a bulk, I just eat a little bit more within those confines of that every day of what I'm used to. And then if I want to eat less, I just go back to eating less again. I snack a little bit less in during the daytime. Maybe I throw in another protein shake or something instead of eating a certain thing. So it's just the ways of kind of expanding and contracting what I'm doing based off of what I needed. In this cut, I hit my lowest before even our prior cut I was 218. So it's the lowest I've been lean wise since we started this program, and it wasn't hard. It wasn't hard at all. Now, don't get me wrong. It's not like it's like trivial. I don't want to discount that, but I mean, for me, it's just like literally I stop eating less and I lose the weight. I'm like, oh, hey, cool. I lost 2 pounds. Somehow when I was on vacation, I didn't count my calories at all. I literally ate and drank whatever I wanted to. But again, still with that mindset of trying to be responsible about it. But, I had 2 or 3 slices of pizza while I was there. I had, drinking, booze. I was drinking like the Mountain Dew, hard Mountain Dews, which are phenomenal, by the way. But I was doing all these things that I, and I came back and I lost 4 pounds. It's just like.
So again, stress. It's because people come back for vacation like, oh, I lost 6 pounds, 4 pounds, 8 pounds, 2 pounds, whatever it was. And like, it's because you're not stressed, because you're actually chilled out. Yeah. And your body operates in a different way. So it just shows the impact that stress has on your body in that situation. And I think what you're saying there, number one, the conversation that we had the other night about wanting to push and you being comfortable with actually pushing up to a certain weight and not like have that mindset of, I'm just going to end up being fat Dave again. Like you actively want to, because you can just switch it and come back down. Yeah. And whenever it comes to the food thing, like you said, you have food that you eat. Whenever you have more calories, you just eat more of that same food. And whenever you have less calories, you just eat less of the same. Yeah. I think one thing that people, and the reason I don't like the term bulk is because there's that sort of like, all right, well, I'm going to go from eating like clean, good quality food to eating fucking Domino's and cheeseburgers for breakfast. And it's like, you just need to eat more of the same foods that you can process and digest. Yes, okay, you have a little bit more freedom with flexibility. If you're dealing with, instead of 20% of 2,000 calories, you're dealing with 20% of 4,000 calories. There's a lot more to play about with. But the majority of your food still be good quality, whole, nutrient-dense foods that you can eat and digest well.
What I found absolutely insane this time around is that we've been at 2,700 calories now, I think, for 2 months now, maybe. And I'm still losing weight at 2,700 calories, which is insane to think about. Like when I first started, it was like, 2,000 calories was my deficit.
But again, it comes back to your body is different now. You have more muscle mass, 100%. So you need day to day. It needs to be
validation.
Different.
It's validation of the more muscle mass you have, the more calories you burn, the higher amount of food that you can eat. Thus, you have to maintain that based on eating it. And so
the greatest fat loss tool of all time is more muscle.
It is 100%. Nailed it.
That's
it for the podcast. No, but moving back onto the topic, I mean, what's great about where we were at from a spot perspective on this injury is that if you look at injuries in general, usually they're pertaining to a specific muscle group, right, or a bone or something to that effect. So there's some good studies out there that actually showed that if you train the opposite leg, let's just say I break my leg, okay, there are studies that show if you train the other leg, it still sends the same signals for protein synthesis and mTOR as your other leg. So you can actually just lift one leg and you get the same amount of strength and muscle mass gain in the other leg, which is insane. And there's multiple studies on this, by the way. It sounds insane and crazy. It's 100% true. So, and it may not be the equal amount, but it's pretty darn close to it. So, you have to think about as you're going through and as you have injuries, for me, the big thing is I need to continuously feel like I'm making progress, or else, I feel defeated or I'm not doing things hard enough. And so, when I was going through this ankle issue, I was very careful, no running. I tried to keep walking to a minimum just to make sure I didn't re-injure it. But, I had to go to a Taylor Swift concert, and I did a bunch of walking there. It was insane. I was like in so much pain.
Worth it though?
It was worth it. My daughter had a great time, and actually Taylor Swift's actually pretty incredible. Like I'm not a fan of like her music just because it's not my music type. But I mean, she's phenomenal from a talent perspective. She can play multiple instruments. She writes her own music. It's just amazing what she's been able to accomplish. So she's probably literally the best entertainer that we have in our generation by far. But her show was awesome. Like, wow, that's so cool. Like, I mean, I'm like, that's a pretty cool show. My daughter's like, you're a Swiftie now, Dad. I'm like, I'm not a Swiftie. Let me go get a shirt really quick. But
you have this in an XL.
But again, within moderation, right? And one of the things that I really focused on was how do I repair faster? Okay, and what I look at is one, if it's swollen, ice is a great way to reduce inflammation, right? But you do want some inflammation, and this is a lot of folks probably heard us prior in our podcast, but inflammation is a good and bad thing. Okay. We're taught, when we're kids and everything else and parents that if you have inflammation, you want to get that inflammation down. Well, inflammation is a natural repair process in our bodies. And, the cold plunge movement is an interesting one because aside from me hating cold plunges or anything cold.
Somebody asked me whenever we were in Pittsburgh, like, have you got Dave on the cold plunge? I'm like, no. Nah. He's like, but even with all the studies and this, I'm like, no, he just is not zero. And like, if I told him it would allow him to gain 100 pounds of muscle overnight, still wouldn't do it.
No. It's cheating anyway. So. What I found interesting about cold plunge is that the science is still out. There's definitely some benefits, but there's also some negatives to weigh in. And the big one is that when you're going through and doing resistance training or weightlifting, you want that inflammation process. You want your body to swell up and then start to repair and build your muscles. That is a natural thing, and that allows us to continuously put on more muscle mass and improve our strength, improve our endurance, improve the size and volume of the muscles. With cold plunging, if you go in cold plunge like directly after working out, or they say, and here's the thing, there's no studies on this part here, right? But it definitely blunts the muscle hypertrophy and mTOR process building in muscles when you do a cold plunge after resistance training. Now, the dopamine hit and the overall like feeling that you get when you go through is great, because it's hitting a lot of those things out there. But when you look at when you want to do it, you want to space it out at least. Huberman says 6 to 8 hours after you do a resistance training or prior to actually going and doing it, because you don't want to stunt those pieces there. Now, there's great studies on showing that it increases brown fat, or the good fat that you want to have in your body. Has a lot of great benefits in those areas there, recovery, stuff like that. But again, you got to be really careful with those. But from a recovery process, I didn't do any cold plunging. I did do a sauna more often, which increases blood flow, thins the blood out, so allows the blood to reach other areas to repair things a lot faster, as well as kind of bump up the recovery and healing process as you're going through. Plus, overall, it's just great for me from a longevity perspective. And the second thing that I focused on was peptides. And we've talked about peptides before, and I think a lot of folks in the audience are probably familiar with peptides. But peptides are a great way to do different things that you might want it to. Like there's peptides for melatonin, for example, where it actually, instead of going on the sun, it'll actually tan you naturally, through that. Now, again, there's the potential risk of melanoma and cancer the same way as it would be for anything else. But literally, you can inject the peptide and it'll tan you, as you go through.
Obviously, didn't take that one.
I obviously did not take that one. There's peptides for natural human growth hormone secretion, so to increase your human growth hormone levels. And it's funny because I just got ipamorelin and tesamorelin prescribed. And I've had it prescribed for a while. I just never really used it. And I started taking it, and for some reason at night it causes insomnia for me. So like at night I'm like wide awake till like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning if I take it. So I'm not taking that. So see what it is. But they're essentially chain amino acids, and they're natural to our bodies. So they're essentially instruction sets that tell our body to do certain tasks in a chemical way that our body would naturally do this. So they're not, it's not human growth hormone that you're injecting, like manufactured human growth hormones. It's saying, hey, I need you to secrete more growth hormones, giving you instruction sets that your brain or your pituitary or things would go and actually do. And with recovery, there's some really great peptides out there. There's TB500, there's CJC 1295, and then there's BPC 157, which is probably my favorite one. And BPC 157 is a amino acid that gets secreted from your gut, and it tells your body to essentially regenerate and recover the areas that those acids are in. And so it's mixed on whether or not you need to inject it in the location or not. It's widely believed that you need to. So, if I injure my shoulder, I'll do a BPC 157 injection in my shoulder, as I'm going through, and that repairs it much faster than your body naturally would. So I did that in my ankle, and I was able to recover much faster that way. So it's basically like amping your recovery and repair process for an injury much faster. TB500, very similar in nature to where it doesn't need to be localized, but it helps your body with recovery and overall performance recovery as you're going through. CG 1295, very similar to that as well. But I found that peptides have definitely helped me recover much faster than normal folks would, especially while your age. I'm in my 40s. Recovery isn't as fast as when I was in my 20s. These types of things can definitely help speed up the healing process as you go through.
Yeah, I think the first time I heard about them was, I'm going to say, from Ben Greenfield, in the way that it was described as it's like the Wolverine gene, where he can just repair himself straight away. But it's like you said, it's sending the signals to produce more of the things that you need for repair and recovery.
Yep. And I've used BPC 157 a number of times, and there's so many studies on it. Very safe, very effective, very natural way of looking at recovery. It's no different than, taking in magnesium or, vitamin C or D. They're just normal instruction sets that your body typically sends through to help. And there's similar. So if you're familiar with testosterone replacement therapy or TRT, one of the side effects of TRT is your body now has enough testosterone that your pituitary doesn't actually send a signal to produce the LH and FSH sex binding hormones to produce more testosterone from your testes. And so what typically, if you look at like in the 80s and 90s bodybuilding, they would say if you're injecting testosterone, you had small balls, right? So and that was because you stopped those signals. Well, we've had a lot more medical advances and things like that, and there's some peptides out there called gonadotropins, I believe, as well as, so one of them was HCG, another one was like gonorrhea or something like that. But anyways, they mimic the same signals, the LH and FSH signals. I think HCG only does the FSH, if I remember correctly. But it basically will tell your testes to continuously produce more testosterone on top of the testosterone that you're injecting in, to be able to simulate that same signal coming from the brain. And it's kind of crazy how the brain works. It's like, hey, I have a good level of testosterone, I'm gonna report that back, cool, don't need to send any more, right? It's so smart in the ways that it balances all of these chemicals in our bodies to allow us to really, be what we are today. And so fascinating how that all works. But, there's peptides for literally everything. And for BPC 157, the doctor said that I would be out for basically 8 months. Well, I'm at 4 months right now, not 8 months, 8 weeks. I'm at my 4-week cycle, and I'm back to running. I'm back to lifting. There's still some soreness, which I'm being very mindful of. So it means it's not fully repaired and healed. But I am probably 90% recovered, whereas I'd probably only be maybe 70 to 60% recovered, without probably going through the BPC 157 route. So it's kind of neat how you can kind of work yourself around those injuries and also repair faster as you're going through.
How you can hack your recovery.
Hack your recovery.
There's a couple of people as well, like Kyle, shout out to Kyle first of all for having us round to his house on Saturday. Also shout out to Kyle for informing me that tequila is an anti-inflammatory. Different conversation for a different time. But same, he used it on his wrist. He injured his wrist. He does BJJ, so he wanted obviously to recover from that. Recommended. And there's a couple of other people within the team who sort of went down the same route of like, you got an injury, okay, let's fix it. I will say 99.9% of the injuries within the team happen outside of actual lifting. So yeah, nothing to do with me.
My injury came from running, unfortunately. So cardio.
Well, I think we all know my stance on running.
Yeah, so I mean, like, and so from your side, Ben, like, how do you handle clients that get injured, and as far as like training programs, and what are some of the tips that you've seen to help either recover, repair, or work around this so you don't lose your gains?
Well, exactly what we did. We worked out what we could and couldn't do, took out the things that we couldn't do, did more.
You built me a training program based off of that.
Yeah, did more of the things that we can still use the same muscle group, but not put the pressure through whatever it is. So we use your ankle as an example. So we took out the big heavy compound movements where there's literal pressure going on it, and we changed the focus. So we took it obviously away from legs more and put it more into like back and upper body. We did have a lot of leg extension, hamstring curls, but again, you can use the muscle in a way that's not necessarily putting pressure on wherever the injury is, and that goes across the board. If it's a shoulder injury, like my shoulder, I can't press anything over my head, like I just don't. But there are other ways to train the shoulder. So it's like, okay, right, we can't do this movement specifically because we're limited in the range, or it's what causes the pain, or it will make it worse. But it's understanding that that's not the only one way to train that muscle group. Or do we do it lighter or in a different movement pattern that we can still keep it moving? I think the worst thing that you can do, number one, is just stop training altogether. But number two, just to avoid that muscle group altogether. Like there's always some sort of workaround that you can keep it moving. Even like if you think about a broken bone, like if I break my arm, like I'll still be able to move my shoulder, or I'll still be able to move in some way, shape, or form. Okay, not like loaded with weight or whatever, but there are ways that we can adapt the training program, and that's literally what it comes down to. Just what can we do, what can we not do, and then gradually start to, like whenever you test out the deadlifts, like after about 3 weeks we tried it, and you were like, no, definitely no go.
Not.
But
I went lightweight, by the way. I went lightweight, wasn't going crazy, and
good feedback, and then like, okay, right, well we'll just not, and then we tried again, and then we tried again, and it's just a case of, okay, yes, the doctors will give you a guideline in terms of time. I don't necessarily think they take everything into consideration. They're probably on the side of caution because that's their job too. If they'll tell you to just stop training altogether, it's probably like a insurance policy for them.
Right.
But if you're cautious in what you do, and you take into consideration like the movement patterns you can do, trial it out. Just don't give it up, because again, if you were out for 2 or 3 months and you hadn't trained whatever the muscle group is, like to get back into that would be a complete shit show. And there are other ways around doing it. And even, I guess, to delve a little bit deeper in that, people who train at home who don't necessarily have a full gym or lots of equipment, like there's ways that we can train the muscle groups. You just need to adapt to it slightly.
What was really nice about this recovery process was, DOMS, daily onset muscle soreness, and because I was still hitting leg extensions, leg curls, when I started introducing the squats and deadlifts again, I had no DOMs. I didn't have to worry about, the crazy soreness and things like that occur when you kind of stop, hitting a muscle group and it's got to get back to normal, like normal pain, what you experience. So that was really nice to see, because I continued to train as I went along. And, the recovery has been slower than I wanted to, right? But, fast in retrospect of what was actually predicted. And, it's just been kind of trial and error. And we do the same thing, by the way. Like my equipment that I use in my gym, and the exercises that we use, is specifically designed to limit the prior issues that I've had before in the past. For example, my right shoulder is always prone to tearing or having tendon or muscle issues when it comes to that. And so we switched to the kabuki bar, which has helped alleviate. I'll be perfectly honest. I'm probably just never going to do a barbell or kabuki bench anymore. I just, because I injured it again recently, and so it's just dumbbells, right? And so, dumbbells, I feel like I have more control. It's safer. I can always just drop them, and you're not having the strain that you have on your shoulders with those. I'm not loading 500 pounds or 400 pounds onto it. And so, for me, it's working around my injuries that I have in the past that I know are prone to that. For the longest time, my lower back was a problematic area for me. Now it's strong. I can't remember the last time I've had back pain, like ever.
Here's a question.
Yeah.
Put you on the spot. What's the analogy for working around an injury from what we do to what you do in security?
An analogy around an injury around like cybersecurity. So, okay. So there's in security, there's legacy systems, things that you can't patch or fix because maybe the business has a lot of investment in that. Like for example, a lot of the financial institutions here in the United States and abroad still use mainframes because that's how the bank grew, and all of the accounts and transactional data and things like that are done through the mainframes. And these mainframes are ancient, right? But to remove that from the business, i.e. go through a surgery is a big deal, right? So you have to do what's called compensating controls, which are to put it in a spot that while it's still vulnerable and hackable, for lack of a better term, you kind of put it in its own island, and you have sensors around there that monitor for it to be hacked, and making sure you put enough controls in place that even though there's a risk here, you've reduced the risk substantially by putting these things in place. So very similar to working around an injury, especially if you're prone to reoccurring injury, you have to put compensating controls in place to ensure that you're not re-injuring those specific areas. Boyd is a great example. Boyd has had a lot of back problems, including, I believe, surgery on his back. I'm not sure if it's surgery or not, but he's definitely had major injuries on his back. And for the longest time, he wouldn't touch anything like deadlifts or squats or anything like that because he was super concerned about re-injuring his back. But as he's gained confidence and as he's gained more strength, I think he sent me a PR today that he hit, like mid 300s, and that's phenomenal. I mean, for somebody that couldn't even, deadlift the bar without the worry of breaking his back, is now in a position to where he's drastically increasing in strength in those areas. So it's finding the things that work for you while minimizing the risk, putting the compensating controls in place, and then from there, seeing what works and what doesn't. And you obviously don't want to re-injure yourself, but at the same time, if you're doing things methodically and you understand what's actually wrong, why it's doing that, why that injury is there, then you can absolutely work around it. I mean, mine's no question, based on shoulder positions, it's over, stressing my shoulders and putting too much weight on my shoulders to where my right one, it just, it tears again. So, it's just finding those right things that allow you to kind of move around it, to build around it. Erin, for example, doesn't like doing any type of deadlifts or squats because she's injured her back and a bunch of times. She also will have issues at times with her knees. And so, we've come up with programs that kind of work around that to where she, and she's been getting much stronger. And now she's very comfortable doing RDLs now. So it's interesting to see how once you get stronger in those areas and you kind of put things around, the muscles to be able to support that, building muscle around your lower back, for example. Someone on Twitter just yesterday said, I always have back pain when I'm lifting. What's your recommendation? I'm like, rack pulls all day long. Just sit there and do rack pulls all day long.
Don't start with 600 pounds.
Don't start with 600 pounds. But
I think the thing is, back's a big one. Majority of people. Yeah. But no one ever does anything to actually strengthen anything around it. And I've said this time and time again, and you'll know firsthand, like my focus for 99% of the people that I work with is posterior chain initially, because there is it maybe isn't your back, but it's maybe your hamstrings or it's maybe your glutes or something along that chain that is lacking. And if we start to strengthen the things around it, then there's less pressure that goes through your back, and understanding how that actually works and how everything's connected. If you just avoid it, it's never going to get stronger. So you're always going to have that problem. So it's like, right, what do we look at that we can put in place that will like tie the whole thing together? That maybe, okay, yes, there's going to be weaker links just given how you're made up, but how can we strengthen them as much as possible so there's less pressure on it to work through it? Even with the knee, like I was showing Craig the other day, we were doing a split Scots on Smith machine, but we were talking about the knee, and I was sort of explaining, like, if you think about where your foot placement is, if you have your foot here and your knee tracks over your foot, like the stretch between what's happening in your quad across your knee, like that's where the pressure and that's where the issue comes from. Whereas if you can set it up that your foot's slightly more forward and you're only moving into that 90 degree, there's less pressure going through that. So even understanding how that works, so that it's like that's where the pain's coming from, and how do you get around it?
Your exact example there is the issue that I have with my hack squat machine, because my hack squat machine was more vertical in nature. So when I was going down the hack squats, my feet were placed essentially below the point of where my knee was at. So my knee would always flare out, putting almost all the stress on my knee joint there. And I noticed that I started getting, center knee pain as I was going through. So I ended up scrapping that hack squat and going with a different one that was down a little bit more. And I meant to say horizontal versus vertical. So this one is a little bit more vertical. And my knee placements now are much higher up, and my knee never actually goes over it, but I'm still able to get full range of motion and full depth in that squat. Mm-hmm. And I've had zero pain as I go along. So, the type of machines you're using, the type of exercise or movement, just knowing that specific piece there is so beneficial to making sure that you don't have, your knee pain or injury or things like that, or what you're doing. Same thing can be said by stances of how you're doing deadlifts, or, I always try to explain to my kids, think about, like a sumo, for example, think about you're sitting in a rocking chair, right? You're fully sitting down. You're not trying to bend with your back. You're always sitting down in that chair and you're looking up, and just getting them to pull less with their back and more so with their entire body, and most specifically your glutes, hammies, and quads. And having an understanding of that and where your feet go, making sure that they're not, too far back to where now you have to bend over, now you're bending with your back, or, too far forward where you're leaning over now and you're in a different position, right? And so those things like feet placements, the range of motion that you're doing from those exercises, all super, super duper important. And even like with the pec deck, I'll notice, the pec deck comes back a little bit too far for me because it causes the stretch there. So what I do is, I kind of move it forward first to get it into position, and then I do it and I don't go all the way back because it's stretching, too much on my shoulders. So, just knowing your range of motion, what's healthy, what's not. Notice that, machines are built, typically for, 5.5, foot type of folks. So, if you're a lot taller, maybe the machine isn't necessarily designed for your height or stature or weight. So there are ways that you need to kind of look at that and focus on it as you're going through to make sure you don't have additional injury.
Even from a ratio perspective or like length of limbs, like one thing I noticed, shout out to Adam for hosting another powerlifting clinic when we were in Pittsburgh. Like I know that everybody who goes through that gets so much from it because they learn how to actually move and what they should be thinking about. But I stayed there watching, and they did like deadlifts back to back, and like maybe 8 people did deadlifts, and they're all different. It's like you can't just expect everybody to move the same way because everybody's different height, everybody has different limb lengths, like how they move, how they operate, like where they're limited.
Well, that's what pisses me off so much about the unsolicited, feedback. Is like
you need to stop doing deadlifts because Twitter,
right? Twitter said you shouldn't be lifting heavy.
Yeah.
Or I had a best friend that blew his back out doing deadlifting. Okay, well, what are the circumstances with that, right? But it's funny because one of my friends recently posted, he just getting into lifting, and just posted, his first real bench press with weight on it. And he was super excited, right? And he got like 8 people saying, "Oh, you should do this, you should do that, you should do this." He's like, "I'm never posting again." Because these people are just idiots. It's like, and they have no idea what they're talking about in many cases. They may
there was
very
somebody
well.
spotting them as well, wasn't there?
What's
like
that?
Is that a trainer that was spotting them?
There's a trainer right there spotting them and watching him and training him as he's going through.
Internet, shut the fuck up.
Yeah, shut up. Like these people, like unsolicited feedback just drives me nuts. Bane of my existence. It's such a toxic thing in this gym culture.
In the gym, like it's just
no one wants your feedback. Period. Okay. Yeah. Now, if they ask you for it, free game, right? But the guy's sitting there with the trainer.
I'm gonna start doing that. I'm gonna do RDL video. Can I have some form feedback, please? Stay tuned.
But I mean, back to your point. Sorry,
I can't remember what it was.
What's that?
I can't remember what it was.
I can't remember what it was. Yeah,
about no one had. Not avoiding the injury. So again, I'll use Craig as an example. We spoke about the knee quite extensively whenever we first started. But again, if you just avoid training your legs, like it's never going to solve the problem. So plenty of leg extension, because obviously you can contract the muscle through that. There's not as much pressure through your knee. You can also do it lighter, so you're not again putting the pressure in. Obviously hamstring curl, same thing. We did box squats versus a normal squat, because again that'll limit you going past that range. So again, if you sort of sit too far down to the squat, it's going to put that pressure and could potentially track over where your foot is. Whereas if you come to the box, you can still have that 90-degree angle. So there's so many ways that you can work around it. It's just a case of you just need to know what it is that you're actually trying to train, where you're limited, and then how you work around it.
100%. Well, wrapping this up real quick, I did want to talk about one quick study, and it's interesting because like supplements are such a taboo subject, right? And the truth of the matter is that you really don't need supplementation for literally anything. There's some staple ones that you can argue, like creatine, for example, can definitely help out with recovery. It's one of the most studied supplements out there, so that's always a good one. Fish oils from a longevity perspective, some great studies on that. But in vitamin D from like a deficiency perspective, you're not getting enough sun. Magnesium is also always a fantastic one to put into play too, if you have that. But it's interesting because like supplementation is something that I always get asked the question of when somebody's first starting, like, should I do this? Should I do this? Should I do this? I was getting a haircut the other day, and the guy asked me, he's like, "Hey, so what does are you natty or not actually mean?" Because he's like, I'm looking at going back to the gym, and he's like, I was thinking about using protein shakes. Is that consider me not natty? And I was like, so I started laughing, and I'm like, man, protein shakes are perfectly fine. Like creatine's fine, blah blah blah. What they're talking about is like testosterone replacement therapy and steroids and things that affect natty or not. But so he's like, okay, but the perception is that you need to take supplements if you want to make gains. And the truth of the matter is your body typically has everything that it already needs, unless you have a deficiency in testosterone or other things to make the gains that you need. So you typically don't need supplementation unless you're having struggles with like your protein goals, for example, and you need protein shakes. Obviously, a lot of us drink protein shakes. I drink protein shakes.
I love protein too.
I drink protein too. Protein. But there was a new study that came out that I thought was really interesting, and it was about deficiencies in B6 and B12, or general B. We'll call homocysteine support type vitamins. And what they found was that by using supplementation of B12 and B6 specifically, that your cognitive function was drastically increased, as well as a reduction in cognitive decline, i.e. being like Alzheimer's and things to that effect. So it looks like, the B vitamin has a pretty substantial role in playing in our cognitive functionality and stuff. So if you're getting blood tests done and you notice that you have a B deficiency, that's something you definitely want to check out from a supplementation perspective. However, if you have good baseline vitamin B levels that you're getting through normal nutrition and eating foods, you don't need to sit there and supplement and have a ton of extra B in here. You're most likely just gonna be pissing it out anyway. When you're using it in from a supplementation form. So again, great study. Awesome to see that vitamin B plays a big role. And if you have a deficiency in that area, that's something you definitely want to check out. But again, know your body, get blood work done, see, and have your vitamins, mapped out from your blood work and see what you're actually deficient on. I take 10,000 IUs of vitamin D / vitamin K, which has a better absorption rate for vitamin D a day, which, people are like, well, that's a high dosage of vitamin D. Well, guess what? When I get my blood work done, I'm right in the normal range. That's the dosage that I need for me to stay within the normal ranges of vitamin D. It's not accelerated. It's not above.
But it's also it's relevant to you as a person. Like, it's a per pound dosage. It's not just a case of everybody needs 5,000 and that's it.
Right.
Because everybody's is different.
Right. That's right. I mean, prior surgeries, stomach issues, how tall you are, how you absorb, where you live, sunlight, all those things can be variations and variables that you need from those. So, the word of advice, is be cautious on supplements. Like,
it's in the name. Like, it should supplement everything else that you're doing. It's not the okay, I'm starting supplements. And the supplements you need are recovery, going to the gym, food, hydration, sleep, and then worry about it.
That's right. And the thing that I needed to tell myself this as well, because I remember sending you the pictures of my pills, and I'd have 40 pills sitting there of everything I was trying, like broccoli extracts and this and that and this, and it's I didn't notice any difference whatsoever. I just noticed that I had to swallow 40 pills, which was basically going down into just going to piss it out via urine. So it's like I'm very back to basics, where I take a multivitamin, I take fish oils. I take homocysteine support for B12 and B6 because I was deficient in those areas. And I take astragalus root, which is great for kidneys and liver. And that's it. That's my supplement stack. I've completely skinned it down to, I think, maybe 6 pills that I take a day. And that's back to normal, for what I'm doing and what I find to have a good baseline on my bloods that I'm actually taking. So it's funny because when I stopped taking those 40, nothing changed as far as my blood work. It's like still great.
And that's a hard pill to swallow.
Right. It's a hard pill to swallow, literally. And on that note, thanks for tuning into this week's podcast. And we'll catch you again next week. And this will be a very special Vegas podcast. We're going to record it here shortly, but it'll be released around the Vegas time frame, I think, right?
It will.
Yeah. Well, tune in next week. See y'all later. Thanks again.
See you next week.